Welcome to podcast conversation that Campfire Concepts is hosting. Mitchell Fransen is here with me as part of the Campfire Concepts staff. I'm Jarrod Scheunemann. I'm the president of Campfire Concepts. And as I've traveled around the state, one of the things I noticed and really enjoyed was sitting at the table with leaders in parks and recreation and just being able to absorb all the good information they were willing to share just in candid and informal conversations. So today we are visiting the Hoffman Estates Park District, helping them with the training tonight. And it was kind of like shooting fish in a barrel, I felt. Two of the best and brightest leaders in Parks and Recreation in Illinois are here with us today. Michael Kies, who is the Director of Recreation for the Hoffman Estates Park District, and Colleen Palmer, the Superintendent of Recreation. I have a lot of respect for them and their opinions, and I hope that we can pull some information from them today that will be useful for you in your career and at your agency as well. So I'll kind of get us started here talking with Mike first. I've identified you as a leader at the Hoffman Estates Park District, also in the state. Done a ton of work with the association, also in the community. I believe you're with the Chamber of Commerce here in Hoffman Estates. How do you come by being a leader, do you think? Is it knack? Is it something that you've cultivated over time? What do you think are some of the things that are evident of leaders?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
Today, Jarrod. We obviously really enjoy working with you and Campfire Concepts, and it's an honor to be part of this process. And as far as your question, I think from my perspective, and maybe Colleen had some insight too, but I think that as far as a leader in our industry, the biggest thing is probably the passion to, let's call it, pay it forward, in that I, just speaking from my own experience, have had some wonderful mentors in my life who helped me in my career and helped remind me of the incredible difference we can make in people's lives, our community, our environment, those that are maybe more in need. So I think that the biggest thing is having a passion to serve. I know working with you, I've been able to define my own leadership style, which is a servant leader. And so as my daughter says, my bucket gets filled when other people's buckets gets filled. And I think being, as you talked about the different organizations that I'm involved in, as well as our mission and vision here at the Hoffman Estates Park District, I think that passion and that, and I don't know if you can teach that, but or train that, but I definitely think you can hone that. And the passion to serve is, I think, is the biggest attribute that you need in our industry to be successful and to I would say make a difference. And a lot of us have it, as my dad always said, leave it better than when you got there. Mm-hmm. And so that's always been my personal mission, is to make things a little better, if anything, or enhance the quality of our residents and stakeholders that we serve. So I would say passion is the biggest thing, and having a servant leader type mindset.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me as well, Jarrod and Mitchell. And I would have to really echo a lot of Mike's comments, and speaking to that passion end of it. I think it's also a passion to move forward, whether it's moving your team forward or moving an agency forward, or really see those successes come from the people that you work with or the people, your team, and taking action on with the seminars, the workshops that you go to on learning about leadership, taking action on those concepts, and getting involved with that and moving those ideas forward. And with that also, I don't know if it's necessarily a knack or experience, as it is getting involved and networking and sharing your ideas and not being afraid to step up and either have a different opinion or have a good conversation about an idea or something that's maybe a large idea in the industry, or even just a fine detail. But sharing those ideas, not being afraid, and then following through with things that you say you're going to do. You know, for example, being on the committees that we serve on. You know, if you say you're going to follow up with a sponsor, or you're going to follow up with a speaker, or you're going to do something. You know, I think you build a reputation for yourself by following through and doing what you say you're going to do. So that's, I think, where you get the leader reputation or that role, but leadership in general, I think, is something that just comes with that passion and something that you practice through taking the action on those things that you're passionate about. So, yeah.
Colleen, you touched a little bit about networking, and I feel like every time I turn around at the Illinois Park and Rec Association and anything I'm involved in, there's Colleen. You're involved in every committee and everything. Why do you find that association so important, and what are some things you take away from it?
You know, I can say that I attribute much of where I am today due to the networking and the people that I've worked with on committees or, you know, spoken with. You know, it's so much a part of where I am in my career. You know, I started out being just a shy young professional, and one of my mentors and leaders in one of my first jobs encouraged me to get involved. And it was serving on a committee, and that just kind of shot me into that, you know, the association and that networking piece, and I haven't looked back. And I think it's so important I personally feel so motivated by sharing ideas and hearing other people's ideas, and just knowing that, you know, we're all in the same boat. You know, we're all kind of either facing the same challenges or seeing some of the similar successes, and networking is such a huge thing. I think it really is such a important piece of that leadership component, and you know, being successful in this career.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, when you were talking, you mentioned mentors and how they've helped you along the way.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel like are some skills or opportunities that they gave you that made that relationship strong and made you a better person and a better leader?
Well, I think in our profession, and we talked a little bit before we started the podcast here, one of the biggest challenges that we face in our profession is, and when I talked about paying it forward, is, you know, analytics and statistics are huge now. And so the largest population that is going to be recreating is the active over 50 individual.
Yeah,
and you know,
the boomers, right?
The boomers, yeah, and the boomers in our industry are retiring as well. And so what I'm learning is that we need to be paying it forward to the next, you know, person coming through the profession, you know, the Mitches and those individuals. What we're finding, and statistically speaking, is that people are coming out of college in our industry and realizing sometimes it's nights, it's weekends, might be a lower paying position where their friends are working 9 to 5, have the weekends off, and they're making financially more money. Whereas 20 years from that point, those same people are circling back in my profession saying, wow, you made the right choice. You know, you're able to have a flexible schedule. You get to serve the 3 pillars of social equity, health and wellness, and conservation. What an amazing career. So our biggest thing that I've learned from my mentor is paying it forward and sharing that expertise and that insight with that next profession, and making sure that we keep them engaged and that we don't lower the bar just based on attrition or retention because we don't have the professionals that are qualified to fill that next step. So that's the biggest thing that I took away from my mentors is I think one of the things is just the other thing is just basically just reaching out. A lot of my mentors were just cold calls that I made because I saw them at a conference or I saw them teach a session, whatever, and learning that it's okay just to reach out to Chuck Balling is one of my mentors. We didn't know each other, but I reached out to him in college when he was at Elmhurst and built a wonderful relationship. And
Do you feel like they were receptive when you would reach out to individuals like that?
Definitely. And what I've told people is that if they're not receptive, then they did you a favor so you can move on to the next person.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a good point.
That's what I've always said is there's a responsibility that we all have, and that's what is probably one of the biggest attributes that I've carried from my mentors, is to make sure that they're sharing a wonderful experience with me and their insight. Make sure that you pass that on to the next generation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I referenced earlier, Colleen, that you're very involved with IPRA. You probably put in a lot of extra hours at Hoffman Estates Park District, as evidenced by tonight. Your training is going to go late into the evening. So what's it like being a parent and being in a demanding career and also trying to serve and grow it through association work and other committees and other things that you might be involved in? How does that work for you?
I'm not sure. No, I'm kidding. It's definitely challenging. I think being a parent in any situation, whether it's a stay-at-home parent or if it's a career-driven parent, it's a challenge to be a parent. But juggling all the responsibilities and the extended hours and things like that can definitely be challenging. And my husband is very supportive. I bring my kids along when I can, if it's a special event, expose them to the field of Parks and Recreation because I'm so proud of it. I want them to experience that as well. But just kind of, staying organized and communicating with my husband the schedules. And I'm thankful to have a flexible supervisor and someone who's flexible with my schedule and allows me to take the time off that I need if the kids are sick or work flex hours if I need to so that I can play my part in the family role. So I think it's just, being organized and having some time management and communication with your partner to be able to balance it all. It's definitely not easy, but it's doable, and I'm proud to be able to show this piece of my career and my life with my children and my family.
So being organized, as you mentioned, how do you keep track of everything? Do you have an app that you use? Do you use the old-fashioned pen and paper? How do you keep track
All
of your
of
list
the
of
above.
things?
I feel like that organization, the time management piece is always something that is evolving. I used to do the pen and paper. Now Outlook, I think, is a great tool. It's got the task reminders and the meeting requests. And then, of course, with smartphones, now you can sync your family calendar and your work calendar and just kind of keep that all organized. Task lists in my phone. I have task lists on my desk. So it's probably not the best answer, but it really is something that evolves, and you just have to figure out what works for you. But that's how I try and keep my head above water.
Yeah. No, seems like you get stuck in one system sometimes, and then it's like you get sick of that one. So you move on to the next
Or you
one.
find one little tweak that might be a better system, so you try that out, and either it's a success or it's not, and you go back to the old system. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So, Mike, conversations at the table often lately are turning to the pending tax freeze that's out there.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's concerned about possible raises in minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like the park and rec professional, the park districts, are squeezed in a lot of ways how to use the tax dollars that they get.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's looking for alternate revenue sources.
Mm-hmm.
What are some ways that the Hoffman Estates Park District is rising to that challenge these days?
Well, I think that's a great question, and I think it's a question and a challenge that all of us in the industry, not only from a state perspective and local perspective, but national perspective, is becoming something that we are challenged with. And I think from our insight, we are trying to lean less on tax dollars and more on user fees. Mm-hmm. And I think you have to be careful. That's a fine balance. But the more we can look at our programs and say, is that a need or is that a want from our stakeholders, the better we can determine where we can maybe generate some additional revenue in our programming inventory or facility inventory, as opposed to subsidizing services.
Yeah.
A lot of our mission and vision with our capital plan now is to make sure that our playgrounds, our benches, our services that we consider are more free to our community or added values to our community are where our tax dollars are going, where maybe a golf course or a fitness membership is subsidizing what we call our enterprise funds, subsidizing the use of that particular service. The other thing is that we're looking at a lot of alternative revenue sources. So we've done some things where we've built some marquee signage, and we're selling space on that, those signs, impressions that drive by our facilities. That's been very successful for us. We've looked at cell towers and creative ways to add those to our lights, to our flagpoles, inside of flagpoles. And the other big thing that has been successful in Hoffman, I think, is our partnerships. We have great synergy between ourselves and the village, the chamber. As you mentioned, a lot of us are involved in those, as well as we have facilities that are practice locations for the Chicago Wolves, the Windy City Bulls, the minor league of the Chicago Bulls. Amita Health, our local hospital, is a park partner. So we realize that the way that we're going to be able to be successful, and the way that I think all organizations are looking, is that how can we provide a service for our communities together and not have to carry the burden of that financial need? Can we do it all together? And so that's the way that we're looking at things, and that's, as we go into our next comprehensive master plan, that's where we've identified opportunities to offset these tax freezes and minimum wage hikes, and that's what we're doing.
Mike, rumor has it that at Hoffman Estates Park District, you all collect a mountain of data related to your facilities, even down to light bulb usage and how much wattage they're putting out, so that you know when you run an event in a space how much cost recovery you need. So what are your thoughts and methods and things that you feel like you're doing to collect data and integrate that use into the park district now and into the future?
We've utilized some university services to actually come in and do an analysis of how we have setbacks on our HVAC, we have motion detectors on our lights within our rooms. We're down to controlling the number of pulsar tablets that we utilize for our aquatic area. We inventory everything, and we also use what's called a GIS system.
Okay.
And that actually allows us to keep track of every piece of equipment that is as low as $5,000 and as high as $1 million, so that we are putting that on a schedule and a inventory program, so we know each year what comes up and what needs to be a priority. And then what we can do is we can actually decide, can we push that out another year, or is that a need? A need is, I think, where most park districts in the industry is going right now, as opposed to a want. We here have a large infrastructure of facilities. So we have roofs, we have HVAC units, we have tile, we have all the things you really don't think about, or that are the, call them the fun things, but we gotta maintain them. And so that's probably one of our biggest challenges, But yes, we record everything.
Yeah, put the data to good use.
That's right. We like analytics.
Yeah. Okay, so last question for both of you. Recent books, blogs, podcasts, something you listen to. What's something you feel like you've read or heard recently that's kind of made a difference in your life?
I'll start. So I think, let's see, I read a couple articles recently, the one recently from the NRPA magazine, actually, on leadership, that just kind of refreshed my knowledge of the transformational versus transactional leadership, and that just kind of was a nice refresher and reminder of what we're doing and why we're doing it. But above and beyond that, I just recently started listening to an interesting podcast called Making Obama. And Obama, obviously being our past president, was a great leader, in my opinion, and it's a 6 to 7 series podcast for about 45 minutes each, and it talks about his very small beginnings in the city of Chicago, and how he was a community organizer, and how, I'm only into like the third episode, but just how, he made a difference, and the challenges that he was presented with as a community organizer, and how that wasn't always seen as like a leadership role or as something that was worthy of, presidential title. But it just kind of helped put some of the things that I value in perspective to see, okay, he started small, and, these are the things that he was influenced by. And it's just really interesting, too, to see, like, okay, this great leader that we had for 8 years, how he got his beginnings. So that's an interesting podcast that I've been dabbling in the last few weeks.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
How about you, Mike?
Well, I think for me the biggest thing is learning from my peers. I am fascinated just having conversations like this, or having individuals like yourself come up here and share ideas. And I know Campfire Concepts and the team that you've put together is cutting edge and is always, I always get, it fills my bucket. I keep using that, but fills my bucket when I can talk to professionals like yourself who can share different insights based on what the current dynamics are, whether that's funding, whether that's programming, so I get a lot of joy out of these types of interactions. It allows me to learn. The other thing that I've recently kind of been engaged in is a book called Who Moved My Cheese?
Okay.
I don't know if you've have had a chance to read that, but what a great we here at the Hoffman Estates Park District have gone through a lot of change, a lot of leadership change, a lot of just change. Our community is very transient, so change is a common thing in our world all the time. Is that, and our old director always said, if you're not changing, or I should say, you are always changing, whether you're changing to be proactive or you're being reactive. So change is always constant. That's the one thing that I've learned. And so I'm reading a lot on that. Like Colleen said, I love to stay up on, I'm not a big reader, so I like the short articles, the
Yes.
ones in the different industry magazines. But I think, learning about change, adapting with change, and being creative and innovative in change is the biggest thing that I've kind of been into right now.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for your time and your insight. I appreciate you sharing with us today. And
Thank you.
look forward to the next time I get to have a conversation and see you all again.